What's happening, dudes? We got a new update for Way of the Hunter, and it's a pretty awesome update, much needed. Personally, in my opinion, this needed to be in here since day one. So we're going to take a quick look at all the details they added and give you a little bit of help. That way you can get this information as quickly as possible. Now, as you can see, they did add little ribbons and emblems next to each herd emblem on the map. And these little ribbons are actually super helpful for whatever is in the area that you're hunting. It also tells you which area this species is located, whether it be private, primary habitat, or secondary habitat. Then once you scroll over the emblem, you actually see the fitness potential and the habitat that they are in. Lowland forest. So here we actually have a private land white-tailed deer herd. They are in the lowlands over here in Diamond Drill. And just looking at the fitness potential, you can see that it is from 50% all the way to 100%. And I have a +1 on the bottom. Now, each one of these little bars that you're looking at here are actually going to be 5%. There's about 20 bars, so that equals up to about 100% there. And for some areas like over here in the lowlands, you actually see that the whole graph is shaded in from right around 10% to 100%. So I'm going to explain this a little bit further and actually what you are looking at there. For this example, we'll just stick to the whitetail herd over here. We have a 50 to 100% genetic herds over at Diamond Drill. And that is going to be for each one of these whitetails. It's going to be 50 to 100%. Now that gives you a general overall estimate of all of your herds in the area. Will be somewhere between 50% and 100%. And that's pretty good considering we just looked at the mule deer and that one was around 10% to 100% with a lot bigger of a range that it could be in. With those bigger ranges and these smaller ranges like this, you'll be able to tell easier what you need to do in that area, whether you need to cull a whole bunch of low fitness males or whether you need to wait for some stuff to grow like I really would be trying to do here with this herd. And then you're really just going to have to use your eyes to judge what is a lower fitness for these animals. And it's going to be way more difficult with predators, but I'm going to show you something else that will help out a lot, specifically for Nez Perce Valley. But back to the fitness potential here, we have 50 to 100% for this area. That means anywhere in this area, we could hit something from 50 to 100% genetic. Now, if we look closer at this graph over here, we can see that it has different levels. And some of these bars are actually bigger than the other ones. And where those bars are larger means that you have more of those genetics in there. So that means over at 50, we might have one or two. Over at 100, we might have one or two. But right there between 70 and 75, we actually have the majority of our animals. So then let's just say we have 2 at 50, 2 at 100. We'd probably have somewhere like 4 to 6 in the middle range. And that's kind of how it's weighted. You'll have a lot more where the larger bars are at than you will where the lower bars are at. And to show you a different example of that, I'm gonna go over and switch to my mule deer herds now in Diamond Drill. And now you can see 50% is where the majority of my herds are at. And then at 95%, you can actually see a semi-shaded bar. Now that semi-shaded bar there means that this area has the potential to go up that high, but because it's not fully shaded, that means that there's nothing in that area that is 95% or higher. So that's kind of how it's working. In this area, my mule deer are kind of suffering. They're all pretty low genetic here, right around 50 to 60. And then as we get closer to 100, they really start tapering off and I get a lot less animals with those genetics. So that's a quick breakdown of the map. Now, the actual area that they're in or the habitat they're in can be confusing at times. So you'll have to be paying attention to exactly where those are at, because as you can see here, we actually have the Black Fox Range as a lowland forest and Diamond Drill as a lowland forest. So if you come in here and you're looking, you're like, okay, where is this guy at? The only way you're really going to know is by the fitness potential. Because over here in the private land areas, you can kind of see that it's really capped off at 50%. So you're not going to get any lower than that in those areas. And just to show you what I mean, we're over here at Hallowich and we're looking at Black Bear here. And there you go again, at 50% does seem to be the bottom for private land. But everywhere else, you you can get down to really low genetics. Now they did add some quick reference guides here over on the right. You can see them right here. It really just tells you what you're looking at. You got private, you got primary, and you got secondary. Private's gonna be that crown, so always look for the king, you know, that's what you really want to hunt. Then the primary is the star. That'll be their second indicator that this is a good herd to go after. And then the secondary is just going to be that line. It's kind of like a squiggly line. It's more so like if you ask somebody, hey, is there a good deer over there? They kind of hold their hand out and they go, maybe. That's kind of what we're looking at with that. So you could probably find something good in there, but I wouldn't be looking for the king in those areas. Now I'm over here in the encyclopedia under mechanics, and then also under animals, you'll have a new section called fitness potential. It should be open to everybody that has completed the parameters for this, but if you don't have it here, go ahead and try and harvest something that is 70% genetics or above. Then this should be unlocked for you once you've completed that. I'm trying to get the team to change it to about 40% or wherever Hollywood's genetics are. It just makes more sense because you really want to know what this information is right away. You don't want to waste the whole game and then finally shoot something huge and then get this kind of information out. This kind of information is really huge for anyone that's kind of managing their herds. But in here, it basically just breaks down exactly what I've been telling you. You have the habitat name, which is right here. You're going to have the habitat quality, which is either primary, private, or secondary. And then obviously it breaks down what primary is, what secondary habitat is, what private habitat is. All this stuff will really help you. Then it tells you all the animals have a certain minimum and maximum fitness potential within each habitat. Like we were talking before, inside the private land, it looks like the minimum is 50. Outside of the private, it looks like the minimum can go all the way down to 5. Now the fitness potential change is the only thing I haven't really touched on because I feel like it's a little weird, and we're going to get into all the bugs that have come up with this. But for now, let's go ahead and just stick to the information that we do know. Down here at the bottom even further, you actually get a indicator of what the ribbon is telling you. So when you look at the ribbon and you see that there's nothing there, it's somewhere in between 0 and 20%. If you see this little blue tag, it's between 20 and 40. Purple is 40 and 60. Yellow is 60 and 80. And then the green is 80 to 100. So then when you're looking on here, you have the yellow, you have the purple. I don't even know if I have any green here because I just haven't really been playing on NES. Yeah, so it turns out I don't have any in the top tier, which is kind of hilarious, but that's all right. We'll get to work on it. I'm actually trying to pull something out right now over here at Diamond Trill. But here's a couple things I wanted to touch on as far as the bugs go. You will have to make sure you harvest a animal that is 70% if you don't have the fitness potential unlocked. But also you're probably going to see herds like this where you don't have any potential at all. You don't see anything about them. And I brought this up to the team. There's several here on Nespers that are like this. Even after harvesting an animal, I wasn't able to make anything come up here. So there are bugs here and there throughout the system that you're going to have to watch out for. This is just one of them. The other one I think that is kind of a big deal is over here in the mountains. As you can see, when you look over the black bear are not in the mountains. They're actually in the highland forest. And the highland forest is over here. This is the mountains. You can see they're well within the mountain range, but really their range is over here in the highland forest. And that goes the same with these guys right here. They look like they are in the mountains, but they're actually in the highland forest. I just think it's kind of crazy to update a game with even more confusing details like that, but at least you're able to see what boundary each one of these critters are in now, so that's super helpful. Now I want to go ahead and talk about the other thing that I noticed. If you go in here into my hunting log, you can see that I've taken out a lot of low genetic animals. I mean, that's all I've really been hunting is low genetic animals. In here for mule deer, that's probably my highest that I've ever taken out here. That one right there is probably my highest, and it was the first one. So when you go through the rest of them, you're like, okay, these are all pretty low genetic, 50s, 60s, right? Okay, well then you look at my map and my genetics are stable and I've waited a long time, but the year before they were actually negative. So it's kind of hard to understand what's going on in here. But if you wait 1 year without killing anything, you're going to go to stable. It seems like if you overkill, you might actually face a negative. And then if you harvest just about 2, you'll end up with a +1 or a +2 there for growth. That's just what I've noticed. But we got this mule deer down right now. We're going to check out what kind of genetics he has and then see what that does to the area after we progress our year. So another nice update that they have given us is actually the calendar up here. You can see which day it is. This calendar goes from 1 to 3 days and then the year starts over. So every 3 days is a new year, and it tells you exactly what day you're on, 1, 2, or 3. Super helpful, so that way there's no guesswork in it anymore. You don't need to set up a herd for for managing your calendar. It's right there, plain and simple. Let's go ahead and pick up this guy and see what we got. Nice shot. Was pretty hard to get to this guy. I felt like he was a pretty low genetic just from looking at this antler over here. He is a mature, so whenever you see that, it's a pretty good indication that he's a low genetic animal. 61%, very good, exactly what you want to do. Right there between 60 and 80% genetics, and we'll go back and take a look at that. And now we'll jump in here into mechanics, fitness potential, go down to the bottom. 60 to 80% gets that little yellow ribbon. So that's pretty much how that part works out. Now, as you can tell right here, there's another bug coming up. Every time I open my map and then close my map, the mission pops up. Anytime you open and close the door, this mission's gonna pop up. You can also see the helpers down in the left hand side will pop up too. It just gets really annoying having to shut all these things off, and the HUD management is actually all kind of screwed up because I've turned it off and on a couple times and it just won't change. Let's go over here to this campsite. We'll sleep there, and I'm actually just gonna go ahead and skip 2 days. That way we can kind of get moving. So I guess while I'm sitting here waiting, I kind of want to explain something that I've been thinking about with this update, and I'm seeing a lot of people in the early access talking about how this is only going to be used for trophy hunting, and I can see that. I think that's a very, very, very valid argument. I mean, people want to chase big bucks, right? You don't want to be out here using all this time. You only get 1 star, so that's just not what you want to do. So you can definitely use this tool for that. You can see exactly where the primary habitat, where the private land is, and then go straight there and have the best opportunity to hunt a big genetic animal. But you can also use that for the inverse. Right now, I have a mission that requires me to harvest an adult American black bear with a fitness level of 50% or lower. So in this instance, I actually need to know where the lowest genetics are, not the highest. They don't want to shoot all these high animals. So in this situation, I would go into my map and I would just start looking at where all the low genetic bears are. So right here, right away, 10 to 100%. I have a way better chance of finding something under 50% genetics if I go here versus if I go over here. It's just not going to happen because everything is at 50% or higher. So now you can actually use this for stuff like that. And I think that this is a huge addition to the gameplay loop. More missions like this will add even more depth to the game. You need to really focus on the fitness percentage for missions, and that will drag people around your entire map versus just trophy hunting in one certain area. Now don't get me wrong, diamond drill and all the private land are going to be huge for that, but if you want to drag these players into all of your map, that's what I would do. I would set up more missions like this that would require you to harvest certain animals, and then I would make certain animals in those areas. Like for your next map, I definitely would try and space out your animals more strategically for your gameplay loop like that. So you don't want every animal in private land. You want a couple in private land to draw the big crowd to that, but then you also want to spread out things in the secondary habitats because that will drive the missions, people over those areas, because without those types of gameplay loops, you'll just be sitting here in diamond drill all day, and that's the only place you'll ever explore. So I think with more mission sets like that, where you're actually having to select a genetic percentage that isn't the top tier every time and is a little different, that will be massive. I think they should also just add missions that'll drag you over here to the mountains for an elk, and that you should have to go over to other areas for elk and for bear and just kind of explore the map that way. But yeah, that's just my take on the trophy hunting bit and what you could actually achieve with this system. Super helpful. It would really help people out when they don't want to hunt in their primary area where they're trying to grow stuff, and then they can just go to a different area to harvest something for that mission. That's what I could see being implemented here. Oh, looks like I gotta go grab this little spot there. But yeah, I'm really liking the update so far. I feel like this is something that should have been in the game day one. It should have been in here as soon as this game launched. We would have had a lot better chance of making it easy for people to play. I do think Way of the Hunter is a harder game to play than some of the other hunting games out there. And with that, you're not gonna have the same type of crowd. So this kind of helps a little bit with that, kind of helping people see exactly where they need to go. But then it also also does help with the gameplay loop when you add more missions that focus on all sorts of different genetic potential. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap that take up, and we'll get back to the hunt here. I'm gonna sleep one more time, and then we'll check on what we actually did with 160% male, which is kind of sucks, I guess, because he was one of the higher genetics in the area if they're all purple. But I'm gonna be honest, I've been looking at all of these deer and they all look really good, so I'm gonna have a hard time kind of discerning what is a higher genetic animal. I got a couple crazy 12 points over here, so we'll see what's going on. I know I have some 4 stars and a lot of 3 stars cooking, so I just don't see how it lines up with it being 50%, unless every single 3 star that I have is just a 60% genetic male, and it's just writing right there. So we'll see what happens here. Okay, so because that guy was a high genetic ribbon there, it did take a negative hit on the mule deer here. So it looks like we pushed them even further into the 50% range. You need to be careful because it doesn't matter what the ribbon says. There could be a higher genetic animal in there for the entire area. You really need to look at what's going on. There must be a lot of lower genetic animals in here that I'm not seeing. So I think we're just gonna get to work and start harvesting a bunch of these guys actually. But that's gonna do it for this one. Thanks for checking out the video. And as always, have a good day.